So get your hand sewing samples done by Wednesday, and then get your closures, which I'm going to teach you today. Be sure that you have those so that you can finish those. So Wednesday, have a clear mind and you can think about just doing the sewing machine, which is a whole new apparatus. It's a piece of equipment, and we're going to start working with this. Because I can't seem to screen share, I am going to show you what I would like you to do and look on your computers to do this process. So this is very important for the resource portfolio, which is the hand sewing as part of that. On your Canvas site, are you guys seeing me, or are you seeing Catherine Forrester's name?
You.
Yeah.
Okay, and now are you seeing Kara's name or just me?
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. So you're going to go to your Canvas site, and this is what we do, right? Canvas, all things the mother lode. Go to modules, and this is where we have weeks 3 through 6, and that's where we're working now, okay? Weeks 3 through 6. And underneath the modules, I want you to look up this page, which is on the top of the weeks 3 through 6, which is sewing resource portfolio. Okay? It's contents, and sample page. So there are 4 items here. The sewing resource portfolio will give you the general contents, and then it will give you a list with points. So it's a 100-point project, and it will list the number of points for each item, okay? Then there's a sample page, a template, which is something that you can download. You do not need to use this template. You don't need to use the template. It's just, if it makes it easier for you, then use the template. And then there's a filled in template so that you can see what I mean, because the template tells you for each sewing sample, you have to complete how to complete the sewing sample, and then what the function of it is, okay?
Hey, Catherine, can you mute your Zoom? Every time that it hears a noise, it pops up her name.
Okay.
So then it will
be muted. Every person should be muted in the group, and then everyone should hide their self view. Okay, so that we get the maximum. All right, so these are the things that we're looking at in our Canvas. Go to modules, 3 to 6 weeks, sewing resource portfolio. This is a 100-point project. There will be a content list, and it's going to say exactly what's included in it. It's maybe a 6 bullet point item. And then there's a complete list of everything that goes into the sewing resource portfolio. Then there's a sample page, which is a template. It's a blank. If you want to download 6 or 10 of those and print them out, you can put your samples right on them. It's a place to put it. And then there's a completed template. I'll just put completed, which tells you how, which is, it's for the running stitch, and it'll say how to execute the running stitch. And then what is the function of the running stitch, okay? So for every single sample, you are going to put a page in that will be this completed template. Whether you use the one that's there or not does not matter. You can make your own. And you're going to say, this is how I execute this stitch, and this is the function of this stitch. This is how I execute the snap, and this is the function of the snap, okay? So hopefully everyone can do that by going to your own modules and without showing screen share, which I can't seem to make activated, you can show that, okay? Does that seem clear to everybody? Pretty straightforward. So please make use of that Canvas site for each one of these items because they're on here. And then that gives you something. If you don't want to download it, no problem, okay? Excellent. And if you have a problem accessing that on your Canvas site, please let me know that as well. Now we're going to move on to, I was going to try and erase with my cursor. That doesn't make sense. Okay, we're going on to closures. So the first thing that you're going to do is get one sample square. So I have my samples. Here's my original fabric, and I have them all lined up so that they're nice and flat in my baggie. And I'm going to pull out one of my 7x7s, which is not one that I've used for turning up my hem, okay? So I'm gonna pull one blank 7x7. So you just saw me do the lengthwise grain, no stretch, the crosswise grain, slight stretch. If I fold the crosswise grain to the lengthwise grain, I make a little triangle. When you fold this, that makes the 90-degree turn into 45, and then you can see the full stretch of the bias, okay, the 45-degree bias. So it's very significant. But you can always tell. That's why I could tell with Ezra, when she stretched it, I could see what was the cross grain, okay? So get your lengthwise grain going lengthwise. And I'm going to show you the steps for getting our sampler piece to do our closures: snap, hook and bar, Velcro, and button. So I'll put those on. Velcro is going to be a machine, so we're going to leave a space for it. One 7x7. Okay. One 7x7. Fold this in half. So this becomes a fold. And then you're going to cut along the fold. You're going to cut, I should say cut 2 inches and then tear along the fold. So I'm going to do that for you now. The reason we're doing that is because we're making a placket. So again, I have my lengthwise grain, and I'll put my arrow so that you know this is the lengthwise grain. Well, that's stubborn. There we go. Lengthwise grain, shown by the arrow on your pattern. So we'll get to that. So I have my 7x7. I'm folding it in half with my lengthwise grain going up and down. And then I'm going to snip 2 inches. And then I'm going to tear that. Okay, so now I have 2 pieces that are roughly 3.5 inches by 7. And I will fold each of these in half. And this will look surprisingly like the piece of white interfacing that I have that you've received in your packet, okay? So I have 2 pieces after I cut and tear along the fold. I now have two pieces. Two pieces, 3.5 by 7. Folded in half. Okay. And then once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and iron this. This piece of interfacing is activated by ironing. So I want you to take a look at this very carefully. So if you look at this, you can see that it actually has two sides. It has a glue dot side, which has small dots on it, and those are dots of glue that we will activate when we use heat. And then it has a side that is non-woven. Okay, this is a non-woven piece. This is non-glue dot side, and this is the glue dot side. And you can see that the dots actually are slightly raised. You can feel them with your finger, and they are activated by heat. Okay, does everyone have their sample of, this is a piece of iron-on interfacing that I'm going to have you use for this closure piece. So I'm going to the iron, and you can see me, it's a bit distant. Actually, I think I can move you to the iron. I did this before. Be easier if I had a tripod, wouldn't it? Okay, here we are, we're at the iron. So I have my two pieces of 3.5 by 7. I have torn it along the lengthwise grain. So it's here, I've torn it. Now I'm going to iron them in half. So they will be at half and in half. And I have a trash can right here. So I make sure that I tend my threads and I move them away from my board and I put them in the trash can. But I know that everything's nice and straight on grain. And I'm going to fold these so you can see I'll have a narrower piece, 2 narrow pieces. So Cara, this one will be one that you'll wait for until you get your iron.
Okay, I might be able to use my hair flat iron.
Oh, you probably can. That's a brilliant idea. Okay, so I've used flat iron for a lot of things. All right, and now I'm opening up one piece. Here's my folded piece. And then I can open this piece up, okay? I'm going to take my piece of iron-on interfacing and put it against the fold. So here's my fold. I'm going to lay the straight edge against the fold with the glue dot side down on the wrong side of my fabric. So it goes completely along the fold line. Okay. And then I'm going to iron this. When you iron your interfacing, you want to make sure that it doesn't stick out, because if it sticks out like right here, it will stick to the surface of my ironing board. Okay. So to prevent that, I can iron it on another piece of fabric, or I can iron it on a piece of paper. And when you iron on a piece of paper, we use scratch paper for everything. But when you iron on a piece of paper, you want to make sure that you're not ironing ink onto your board. So I will fold that, and I will use this to iron my nice interfacing onto my piece, laying it very carefully along that folded edge, okay? so that when I close this up, it will be encased inside and we won't see it. This iron-on interfacing has multiple purposes. So I'm going to iron it now. I've used the folded edge to give me a straight of grain to place this iron-on interfacing against. And you want your iron interfacing to be on the straight of grain. Now I can fold it again, and I'll have a nice crisp line where my iron-on interfacing is ended. The reason we're doing that is because this will create a heavier weight piece. This one you can see is very floppy. This one is now more rigid. This creates a heavier weight piece so that when we do our machine-made buttonhole, we are going through one outside layer, one layer of interfacing, and then the back layer, okay? To prepare these, we are going to put the folded sides together. The interfacing piece will be on the top. So I'm going to overlap 1 inch, and I'm going to pin that. I'm going to write this on the board. At the pin mark, I'm going to backstitch to hold these two together, okay? So our backstitch comes in handy once again. And let's move back to our board. So now I have these pieces together. I have my, wow, I do everything at an angle. So I have a folded line here. I have the interfacing ironed on and attached at the fold line. So this is the interfacing. And then I fold this together to make two pieces now with one has the interfacing in it. And one without. Okay. The next step will be to overlap these two pieces at the top 1 inch. So let me put that over here. I'm going to put the two pieces together, overlap 1 inch. Interfacing on the top. Okay. So that will look like this. Here's my one piece. Here's my second piece underneath and sticking out this far. And then the next thing I'm going to do is backstitch together. So remember, backstitch is when we don't have a sewing machine. And it creates a good firm bond right here. So you can see that's what I have going on. Here's my interfacing piece on top. Here's my other piece. And remember, I should say overlap the folded edge. Overlap the folded edge. Okay. Now I'm going to backstitch this, and I'm going to do that so it's secure. This is creating a mock placket like this, right? So it's a mock placket so that we can put a buttonhole in and you can unbutton it. We'll do a hook and bar, we'll do a piece of Velcro, and we'll do a snap. Does that make sense? You can see how that works like a shirt, right? All right, the first one that we'll put on, I'm going to backstitch this first. So let me just demo that one more time. I'm looking for my, here we go. Here's my needle. This should be quite quick because I'm just doing a couple inches. And this would be a really great place for you. So roll it over the end of my finger, pull it, have my knot, and that's my long end, and this is my short end. Okay, I'm going to hide my knot always, and I will put this down. Well, 5/8 of an inch is our average, so we can put it at 5/8. I'm just about at 5/8, so I'll be stitching it at 5/8. Okay, so I'm going to backstitch by going back and then forward. And I'll do it down here so you can see this. Okay. I want to make sure it's very even. I'm going back to where I first came out and put my needle beyond my hole to go back to where I first came out of my, pierced my fabric, and then I'm carrying it through underneath to make, remember this makes the T, so that on the back I am overlapping. On this side, it looks like a sewing machine stitch. Oh, sorry for a second, you guys. I'm going to record this. Oh, I am recording. Okay, very good. So this will be on the closures page, the closures module section in on the modules under hand sewing closures. This is going to be a second recording from today. The first recording will be review and cutting your fabric, and then this will be the one about portfolio and hand sewn closures, and you have that page already published. So I'm doing my back stitch. Notice I'm still using my single layer, my single thread. And now I can feel that I'm off my double layer, so I'm going to put a knot here. So this is my stitching line on the front and my stitching line on the back, so it's very secure. And now to finish, we'll review this portion because we didn't do that today. Remember, at the end of every hand sewing, we make one tiny bite to create a loop, pull the needle through, a second bite, oh, I'm gonna have to do another one because I lost my loop. So I'll do a bite, and there's my loop, pull my needle through, and then hide the tail. So I'm gonna separate my fabric and then just hide my tail through here. And then if I pull that slightly, I can make that disappear into the fabric. Okay, so now we've backstitched the top. This is very secure, and it should be evenly down my page, down my placket, so that the placket is very even, imitating the front of a shirt, just like this. Okay, I'm going to get rid of these stray threads because I don't want them to confuse my thread at all. So I'm going to get out the closures that we will use. On our closures, we use 2 threads. We will always stitch with double thread on closures. That's because they tend to be a bit wiggly. They should be attached on your safety pin. So this is your Velcro. This will be something we do by machine. So just hold that. There's a fuzzy side and a loop. So a loop and hook side. This is the loop side is the soft side. The hook side is the harsh side. I have a button, which is a sew through button. And please look on your Canvas site and you will see that there's several buttons listed, including a sew through, a shank button, and a covered button. And next I have my hook and bar, so I'm going to get that off. And you can see this is a bar and a hook. There's the hook. And this reaches around and you can see that the bar has a shape to it. There's a shape to the bar where the hook is naturally going to want to rest in this way. So the curve of the hook, the bar, goes to the hook. So the hook grabs it this way. Okay? Your hook is going to grab the bar that way. Then the last thing that we have, the last closure we have on our safety pin is a snap. It again is 2 pieces. Note how many of these are 2 pieces. A button actually has 2 pieces. The other side is the buttonhole, which we'll make with our machines. So here I can separate this at the very line. It undoes, and if we're really careful, we might be able to hear it snap back together. So here's the male and the female side. And I put them together and you hear the snap. That's why it's called a snap. So this is the first piece that we're going to put on at the top of our closure. The next piece we'll put on will be our hook and bar. We're going to save a spot for the Velcro, and then our button will be at the end. Okay? So it will be in that order, and I'll write that on the board for you so that you can see. It will be snap. They'll be hidden, but you'll see it. Snap, hook and bar, Velcro. Whoops, misspelled. Oh no, I guess I didn't. I was just adding another C. Velcro here. And then button and buttonhole. So we're going to do our buttonhole by machine. On this side, you'll see the buttonhole and the button will be stitched underneath. All right, so that's the order that we'll follow. On the outside of your piece, you will not be seeing your closure. The idea of a closure is it holds 2 pieces of fabric together. That's the purpose. And then you will make sure that we don't see that, okay? So there's always a choice of which closure do you put next to the body. So for example, with the snap, we have a flat side here, and we have a raised edge right here. So you can see that the snap has a raised edge. And if we look up here, I'll just draw that so that you see the snap is shaped like this. Here's one side, which has a depression to hold the I don't know what it's called. Let's see, the sticking out part. And the snap goes like this. Okay, so those 2 pieces marry together. So it depends on which side do you want to be on the body side. This is the flattest side, so this is often on the side that's next to the body. So here's where your body's going to be. Sometimes this seems like it's more interruptive when it's on the garment side. So then you flip it. And again, I know this seems like it's a minute detail, but every costume shop has the way that they want it done, and they want it done their way. Now, it's interesting in this, I feel it is a garment by garment choice and a purpose by purpose choice. I don't have one way that we're going to do it. So in this particular instance, what we will do is we're going to put this on the underneath side, so the non-interfacing side, and this will be on the top side, which is the interfacing side. So I'm going to write that here. So this piece goes on the non-interfacing side. All right. So when I show you this, you'll see my non-interfacing side. Here's my interfacing side. It's the top. And here's the interfacing right here. And the non-interfacing side. So I'm going to put this. Oh, okay. This is revolting. I'm going to have to take this out and start over. Well, I guess, okay, never mind. This is fine. I overlapped it an inch, which is, this is making my raw edge over on this side, but that's okay. Maybe we should only overlap it 3/4 of an inch so that it's, you have more garment showing. But you need an overlap so that you can do your buttonhole. Okay, so my male snap is going to go here. It is going to be set far enough back, at least one snap width back from the fold, so that when it's snapped, we don't see it. Okay? At least one snap width back from the fold. The female snap goes on this side and then is married to it. There is a trick about a snap that you should know. Snaps have a hole in the center. Okay, so you can actually put them on, and then you can match the other side by marking where the hole goes. So it's a very cool thing. So I'm going to put this on in place. And so my double thread, we either do double thread or we do a thread called silamide. Silamide is a heavier thread, and I'll show it to you. Double thread, wrap it around my index finger and pull it. And Ezra, this will make such an easier knot because the knot is much bigger. You can see that. Again, I need to make sure if I put my snap here and I sew it, then you'll be able to see my snap. That's no good. So I'm going to definitely put my snap back far enough, one snap width from my fold line. And this is the back side, so I don't care. I can actually just put my knot on the back side. I don't have to hide it. I'm going to work from the front side, however. So I have the snap facing me, one snap width over from the fold. I have my knot going from the back, and I will push my needle up through my snap. Okay. And then I'm going to work on the front side only. So I'm going to take a bite and go through this hole. Note that I'm holding the snap with my non-working hand. I'm not stabbing it. I am taking a bite through both layers, and I'm taking 3 bites through each hole. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And on the back side, you can see it. And you can see it because this is the back side of the garment that's going next to the body. We don't care if you see it. So the most important thing is work from the right side. Don't stab stitch, and I'm going to show you what that is. Some of you may be tempted to go like this. Let's see if I can do it. So to go like this and pull through, okay? Don't do that. It takes way too much time. So you can see I'm pulling through to the back side. You can see all my stitches here. When I pull through, I take a bite. You see my needle comes out here and it goes back around to my hole. And then I'll get my 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3. And then I tie a knot on the back. So here's the front side with 3 threads through each hole, double yarn. And on the back, I don't mind if you can, what you can see. Oh, there you go. Because that will be against the body. And then I do my same knot technique, 2 loops, and then hide my thread. So to make this match, make sure that I'm not poking through, so I hide that. All right. To make it match, I can poke through the center of my snap and through the center of my fabric. If I just put it down together. And where my snap has, where my pin has poked through, that's going to be the center of my snap. So I'm going to mark that with my pencil. Okay. Because I have these little wiggly things, I had to remove it so you could see it. But there's my mark, and that's going to match perfectly to my snap. So I take my female section, I put it face down on here. I'm going to need to get more thread. I'm stitching with double thread. Wrap around my forefinger, make my X, roll it off, pinch and pull, and then I have my knot. And this time, because this is the right side of the garment, I'm not going to put my knot on the outside. I will be hiding my knot and bringing it up just outside of my mark. So that's the center of my snap right here. So I can tell that the outside hole will be approximately here. So I'm hiding my knot inside. I'm going to pull that. Notice, okay, I'm on the interfacing side. That will give strength to my hand sewing. And then I can put my snap in, matching the center on that X that I've made from matching my pin. And now I will stitch 3 times through each hole. All right. Now I want 1 stitch only to go through to my right side. The rest of them will stay on only this layer with the interfacing right here, because I don't want it to look ugly on the other side. So only 1 stitch for every hole goes through to the right side. And again, I'm using that method of feeling my finger underneath so that if I prick my finger, then I know that I'm Sleeping Beauty and I'll fall asleep. No, it's I know that I'm through my fabric and I don't want to. When I carry my needle underneath to go to the next hole, I am not going through to the hole outside. Okay, you do not see it on the outside. I'm just carrying it through the 1 layer only, so that then I can continue with my 3 stitches. 1 stitch to go to the outside. I guess I have to make it a little heavier. And that's so that you anchor all your fabric together, okay? And if you're sewing in the matching thread, then it will be invisible. Again, I'm carrying it through to the underside by not going through all the layers, just going through that one layer, okay? Just through one layer. And then 3 stitches. And you know what? Closures take time. This is called finishing, and you want to make sure that you are finishing your garment as beautifully as you've stitched it. And my mom, the great Yvonne McDowell, you will hear a lot about her because she's brilliant. But, you know, she always said it's when you're sewing, it's worth buying good fabric because it takes a lot of time and effort, and you want something to see. I can't do that. That is going to show through. So when you're sewing, it takes a lot of time and effort, and to do something of good quality, you want to start with a good quality piece of fabric. So she never understood sewing with, you know, 59-cent fabric when you're going to put in all this time, because it does take time. And I guess all right, finally, I'm not through both pieces. So I have adopted that. And I continue moving this around in my hand so I make it the best position for me. Now I can tell that, oh, you guys are going to have this too. I'm going to give you a couple of tricks here. I can tell that my thread has crossed, and I have a little loop, so I want to get rid of that. But I'm untangling my thread. It's spun around my needle. Okay, so that will happen. And I'll take another bite. And then to make a knot on this, I have to make a knot right here on this side, because if I knot on this side, it would be on the outside of my fabric, my garment. So I'll make my loop. Again, I'm biting only the top layer, not going through to the second layer, or which we call the right side. And when you do something like this, you'll never have a button fall off, or you'll never have a snap fall off, because it's gone all the way through all the layers, at least on a couple of occasions. And I still want to hide the tail, because these snaps, places where there's closure, get a lot of wear. They get a lot of touch. If you're a basketball fan, it's how many touches do they make to the ball? Okay, I'm going to prepare this for my next piece by just knotting it and sticking it to the side. Then I'm going to check my snap. Does it work? Yes, hooray. And is it even? No buckling. So there's nothing that's bunching up or anything. It just can go straight down. And that's what you want. So this is my wrong side. You can see more, but on my right side, just 1 stitch per each. They're very small. You don't really see them. So this is the back side, okay? And then, you know, people just jerk on them. So if you just snap it and they want to jerk it open, they can. And see how well my back stitch is holding, just like a sewing machine. So that's actually a very good example of that. Next piece. Again, we're going back to our right side. So this is my right side. This is the top of my placket. The hook goes on this piece inside. It needs to be far enough back that the hook does not show through. We really don't want to see it peeking out like that or peeking out like this. We want our hook to be completely concealed inside. So to that end, you want to sew the hook on first, because the bar will then follow naturally where the hook, where it should be. But if you sew your hook too far out, your bar is going to be clear out here, and then both will be visible. And that will be very unattractive. So I'm just going to locate my hook. Remembering I'm going to sew the hook side down so that it can actually hook to the bar, okay? So that the bar is here, this will hook to the bar. So when I'm working on my hook, I'm sewing it upside down. I'm going to make sure that it is far enough back from the edge of my fabric that I will not see this bar, okay? So there's 3 things that we're going to do on the hook. And these are covered in your book, by the way. I've given you on the page on Canvas, I've given you the pages that are in your textbook too. So the snap, three stitches each side. Okay, the hook is going to be stitched on upside down like this. And you will stitch it at the hook and then 3 stitches in each of the hole of the hook. Okay, and then the bar is the same, has this curved that's going to hook into, and 3 stitches per each. So we're going to do that right now. So here's my hook. I'm sewing it on upside down, exactly like our drawing. I'm going to stitch my ends in first, and then I'm going to stitch the hook down. You really want to stitch the hook down so it doesn't do this when you're trying to hook the garment. Nothing's more irritating than trying to get the garment on and hook it. So here we go. Again, always using double thread. So I have my double thread that I left knotted. This time, because I am starting on the right side, I'm going to hide my knot. I'm not starting on the back side like I did for my other piece. I'm hiding the knot in the middle of the 2 fabrics, making sure that I have enough room to put my hook and my bar will be still hidden. You know, this is really important. Same exact technique. Sew 3 times through with one side, one time, biting through the entire piece. So there's my bite. It'll be through the back side. See the tiny little glint of the needle here? And again, my non-working hand is working. It's holding my hook in place. There's a lot of fancy stuff you could do with your hook. There's some really pretty stitches you could make, but for now we're just getting it on there. So you're going to make 3 stitches in each hole. Again, always working from one side, holding your hook. That's the very most efficient way. Then I'm going to travel my thread under to my next loop, making sure it's not coming through to the right side, and I'll check that. Okay, that's good. And 1, 2, 3. First one going all the way through, the next 2 not going through. And that's generally enough. And I'll make a loop and knot it here. I am going to carry that up to the hook, but I just wanted to show you I'm knotting it because if something happens, I want to make sure this thing stays on, right? So I do my 2. Instead of cutting this time, I'm going to put my needle underneath and carry it all the way up to the end of the hook. And notice it's not, oh, it is showing, so I'm going to have to do that again. You don't want it to show. You want it to go up to that hook piece without showing. Strange that sometimes part of the needle shows. Yep. There we go. Now I'm good. I could tell I was caught. Okay, so I want to make sure my hook is even, perpendicular to my edge, and that my thread is out. I'm going to wrap that around my hook and see how nicely that makes that seat and sit right down on my fabric. And then I'm going to stitch underneath, only catching one layer. I'm going to double check that. See, I'm not there. So that when I get my hook stitched, it's going to melt right into that piece and be very stable. And 3 stitches. And then we take a knot. Now there's a couple things that I want to just show you about with stitching. Again, I'm going to do my loops, 1, 2, 3, 2, and hide my thread. Yep, there we go. Same thing, when you get your closures done, you want this to act like a placket. So even though you're doing unlike things, I want to be able to snap that. I want my hook and bar to be equal. So I'm going to make sure that my bar is working with my snap right here. And I'll mark that. So that I can put this in place. So you can see there's the curve that I talked about here. This curve wants to face the hook. So there's the curve, and I'm right up against both sides of my other side of this, so that when this of my hook, so that when my hook comes down, it will hook in here, and it will be matching to the snap, so that there's no buckling in the garment front. Okay. Now I don't think that's enough thread, so I'm going to rethread. Now I'm going to show you a couple things about threading. If your thread is uncooperative, you can use something called beeswax, and that will make the hairs of the threads not sticking out so much. And you just take the beeswax and your finger and you run the thread along the beeswax like that, and it makes it very cooperative. So if you are having a problem with stitching, you might want to think about that idea of beeswax. And I can then, let's see if it's more cooperative for my threading. Oh, pretty good. Pinch that off the end, bring this down, make a double thread. Now I want to show you this. I mentioned earlier that we use something called silamide. Some people call it tailor's thread. Sometimes it's called buttonhole twist. Make my X, roll it off the end of my finger, and I'm ready to stitch. So I'll just show you, this is silamide. Here's the package. It's called waxed. Waxed for hand sewing. And you can see that each thread, it's pre-cut to certain lengths. And I just want to show you the 2 threads together, because you'd see that a double thread that we're using is about the same as a silamide, and silamide is very strong. So you can see, here's my double and here's my silamide. And you can see that it actually has a thicker diameter for the thread. So it's excellent for putting on buttons and excellent for sewing on closures. Unfortunately, you guys won't be able to work with that like if we were in person, and I'm sorry for that. However, I grew up sewing without it for ages and ages, and you're just going to be doing old school. So I'm going to sew on this last bar so that we can make sure that this works. Again, I have my 2 graphite marks where I'm going to sew this, making sure that it does not show at all underneath my fold line, but it's still aligned with my snap. I can pierce the back because, again, now I'm working on the back side, or the side that's against the body. So I just threw my knot in on the back, and now I'm using this waxed thread, which is really nice. You could use paraffin. This is beeswax, so you could rub it slightly on a candle, and that would help. 1, 2, you might have a beeswax candle, and 3, and you can see it's very cooperative and speedy. And now I'm going to go to my other side. I don't want it to stick out. That's why I'm checking that. I didn't want to have a big long thread hanging back here. So I'll do 1, 2, 3 on this side, and we'll make a knot and we'll be good. So you may ask, there we go. 1, 2, 3. Tie my knot. You may ask why we're not sewing the button on today. Well, it's because, yes, the button is a hand sewn closure, but the button must be measured for doing a buttonhole. So we'll be putting the button back on our safety pin. Hide my thread. Now, even though they look very different and there are different alignments, when I snap this and I hook this, that hooks and lives just like that. Now my hook does not lift up. They are flat. So if this is down the front of the garment or down the back, it's equal, okay? The reason we're not doing our button is because in order to appropriately make a buttonhole, we need to have this be able to be measured. So for this, please put your Velcro and your button back on your safety pin so it doesn't get lost in your bag. And then you can actually pin it to your little sheet so that now we're not losing small items. So we have 2 beautiful closures, our snap and our hook and bar, that you now know how to do. And you've used your back stitch to hold 2 pieces of fabric together instead of a sewing machine. So questions on that? So you can prepare this, iron, and get your strip ready to imitate your front of your garment placket. And it would open just like that, just like my shirt does. And then we'll be putting our buttonhole on the same way. So the closures page is up and it shows you some hook and snap. And then I'll put this part of the lecture on this closure one tonight, okay? Questions?